Is $150,000 a good retirement income? Well, I think it's pretty good, but there could be some exceptions, and here's what you might be looking out for. All right, so obviously $150,000 could be a great retirement income in life. However, there's a silent killer that most people never consider, at least they don't consider nearly enough, and that's inflation. Inflation could be the one big killer of this. That's what we're gonna talk about today is $150,000 enough, and how do you get it? And even better, is there a way to get it faster if you want to try to retire sooner? Hang in there because that's what we're gonna talk about right now. Okay, so let's talk about the $150,000 income, right? I think it's a great income, especially in today's dollars. Now it can vary. Like for some people, it's a great lifestyle. For others, it may not be. Now I can already hear it because there's gonna be some comments saying, who can't afford to live on $150,000 a year? I get it, I know. Like you got a different life, you live cheap, you live on $100,000 a year or whatever it might be, right? And by the way, I'm being sarcastic when I'm saying this. $100,000 a year is not cheap either. $100,000 a year is amazing. But let's talk about the reality, right? Most people are not living on $100 or even $150,000 a year of retirement income. Because the problem is this, is that when it comes to Social Security, the average Social Security is really only about $1,600 to $1,700 a month. So that's about $20,000 a year of Social Security, and then you gotta make up the rest. Now, the problem is this, is that if you look at Fidelity retirement accounts right now, of the 401ks and IRAs, even though there's 45 million clients, only 810,000 have at least $1 million. That means if you have $1 million right now, you are in the top less than 2% of people today. Furthermore, and this is with people with retirement incomes, right? Furthermore, if you're actually taking out the money that's recommended today, it's only 3% a year. So what happens if you have $1 million in there, you're living on $30,000 a year, combine that with $20,000 a year of Social Security, that's only $50,000 a year. That's not even close to the $150,000 that you are wanting right now. And so as a result, this is where people are realizing it's just not enough. This is why 35% of those people surveyed with $1 million or more believe it'll take a miracle to be able to retire because they know that that 3% is just not enough. Now, why is it 3%? Because of inflation, right? Because of inflation, there's market swings and everything else. So if you're trying to do the traditional retirement plans of 401ks and IRAs, 3% is the max you should do. And that's if you're retiring at normal in your 60s type of retirement age. If you're retiring earlier, like in your younger years, maybe your 40s or 50s, that should probably be 2%, just to ensure you don't run out of money. Because remember, that 4% rule they talked about, becoming financially independent, it's false. It was debunked a long time ago. That was based on numbers from 50 years ago that do not apply today. 3% is that new 4% rule. But furthermore, if you want to try to retire sooner, it needs to be a smaller number. Now, if you retire later, maybe you retire in your 70s, maybe you can go with that 4%, maybe 5% rule. But you got to be careful because people are living longer. In fact, the odds are that if you have a married couple at the age of 65, one of the two of you will live to be the age of 92. There's a very high likelihood that one of the two of you will make it, especially the women. They make it longer because, let's be honest, women live longer, right? So they take better care of themselves, and therefore they need more money to last. That's why the 3% rule exists. So think about this. If you want $150,000 a year, you got to take that number, times it by about 30 times or about 33 times. What does that give you? $5 million. You got to save $5 million frickin' dollars today so you can live $150,000, whether it be today or tomorrow, right? That's a big, big nut to crack. Now, here's the thing. $150,000 might be your goal, might be your bare minimum, it might be a financial freedom goal. You might think that's more than enough to make me comfortable. Either way, it doesn't matter. It's great. I had one client who actually said, I want $500,000 a year. And this guy was saving $200,000 a year into his retirement plans, had $3 million saved up by the time he was age 52. He went to his financial advisor. He said, all right, I've got $3 million. I'm saving a couple $100,000 a year. When can I actually live on $500,000 a year? So of course that financial advisor nerd put his little numbers in there. I actually ran the numbers myself. He put the inflation rate at 2%, which is a bunch of BS. We know it's not really 2%. That's what the government even lies to you, that 3% even. But he put in 2% a year. And he says, well, guess what? Good news. If you keep saving $200,000 a year on this $3 million, ta-da, 13 years, you should have enough with a 2% inflation rate to live on $500,000 a year. He's like, wait a minute. I already have more money than most people have in these retirement accounts, and I still can't get there. So when he talked to us, I said, well, first and foremost, instead of trying to factor in for inflation, what if we do something different? So I'm going to go talk to you about what I told him in just a minute here. So hang in there. I'm almost there. But remember, you do not want to just keep saving money and thinking that you will have enough especially if you want 150,000 a year. You need $5 million in today's dollars. If you're factoring for inflation, inflation could be much higher. In fact, I would say conservatively, you go to shadowstats.com to confirm, but conservatively, I would put it at 5%. Shadow Stats say it's closer to 7 to 9% a year is the real actual inflation rate that the government's not giving you. But even at 5% a year, guys, that means if you use that rule of 72, you ever heard that before with compounding interest? That also works with inflation. That means when you take that interest divided by 72, that's how many years it takes to double. So if it's 5, that means it's roughly about every 14 years, inflation doubles. I would venture to say probably about every 12 years or so, you're gonna need double the money. That means if you want $150,000 in today's dollars, you need $5 million in a retirement account now. But in 12 years or so, you're gonna need to have $10 million. And I've seen this firsthand because when I was a financial advisor, I thought it would be amazing to live on $5,000 a month. $5,000 a month, I could do almost anything because at that time, my mortgage payment was only $700 a month. It was super duper cheap because my house was only $100,000 when I bought it. This is about 20 years ago, right? Now, back then, I thought $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year was more than enough. In today's, the same kind of lifestyle that I was thinking of and imagining in my mind is actually closer between $120,000 and $150,000 a year. It's gone up because of inflation. And therefore, the amount you have to save also goes up. I was thinking I had to save $2 million by the time I was 40. However, it was going to be more like $4 million by the time I was 40 when I got to that point. That's the difference. And so remember, you're like that Dalmatian chasing the fire truck, right? Like, row, 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 just chasing after it, running after it, but you never catch it. And that's kind of what it's like with inflation sometimes. So you have to really overcompensate to be able to make up for that. So just be aware that that's a big case. Now, I had another a guy that actually I knew was a financial advisor, and he was bragging about how he's able to help this attorney, right? This attorney had about $2 million, about $1.8 million to be exact, that he had in a retirement account. This guy was 55 years old. And in addition to that, he was saving a bunch of money, had some money in savings, whatnot. And he said, okay, this guy, he wants to live on $100,000 a year. He's like, well, if he keeps doing this, in 10 years, we might get him there. Well, I ran the numbers, he wasn't quite there. Not especially with factoring in inflation. But here's the great thing, guys. If you stop worrying about how to invest in the traditional retirement plans, the stock market, and you start looking for alternative investments, now you have a little bit of hope. This is where, even my dad, he saved up in that 401k, got his match, paid off all of his debt, still wasn't enough to be able to retire. He had to work into his 70s because it was never enough because he was still chasing after inflation, like chasing after a fire truck. But what you can do, though, is instead focus on income, passive income to be exact. So, for example, that same guy that I was telling you about earlier had $3 million, right? Saving $200,000 a year. I said, okay, you want $500,000. Well, what if you took your $3 million? And there's various investments we do, like with real estate-backed investments. Most of them pay at least 10% a year. So I said, let's go on the low end. Let's say you average even just 10% a year, and they're paying you income at 10%. They're not just paying you interest, but that's actual income coming in that's able to help you out there. And some of these investments, some of them even raise up every single year, like rental properties actually increase every year. There's other types of investments that I've done, like with land investing, that also can increase every year depending how you're reinvesting it. And so when he starts to do that, I said, well, you have that $3 million will make $300,000 in year one. But if you add the $200,000 with the $300,000 you made, now you have $500,000. Now you got $3.5 million to make 10%. That's $350,000 a year. And now you take that $350,000 on top of your $200,000. You got $550,000 on top of the $3.5 million. Now you have over $4 million a year. And you know where this is going. Within 4 years, rather than hoping to make it in 13 years, like his financial advisor said, with low inflation projections, he can actually hit that $500,000 in 4 years. I can guarantee he's not as worried about inflation in 4 years as he would be in 13 years when that number, and by the way, the number that the advisor gave him was $18 million he would have to get his money up to. I told him that you don't even have to do that. We just get up to about 5 million or so. Even if we want to be aggressive with inflation, get up to 6 million and we'll have more than enough. That's it. A third, maybe a quarter of the money he actually would need in reality, he would need there doing alternative investments, and they're also backed by real assets like real estate, so it's a little bit safer. Again, this is not guaranteed. I'm not telling you that you'll never ever lose money in real estate or anything like that. What I am saying is there's a lot less likelihood that you're going to lose a lot of money there, especially if you do it right. Now, if you want to know what that number could look like for you, on our website, moneyripples.com, you can go check out the passive income calculator, fill it out completely, And you might be surprised just how much passive income you might be able to create right now. And if it's over 15,000 bucks, we need to have a conversation. We need to chat about that, because that's something that can actually generate income for you each and every year and compound your income versus worrying about compounding interest that may or may not happen. So go to moneyripples.com, try that passive income calculator right now.